This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Chris Parker. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad to be able to be here.
So, tell our listeners, who is Chris Parker?
So Chris Parker is the guy behind Whatismyipaddress.com. I think most of your podcasts are about initial startups, but I've been around for almost 20 years. But in my mind, it really has been a startup the last couple of years
Okay.
only.
So, is that due to the fact that there was just a quantum leap in the last 2 years versus what happened the first 18? Or
For a lot of the beginning years, Whatismyipaddress.com was never, I never started it thinking this is going to be my business. This is where I'm going to put my time,
right?
my effort. It was, I was working for an online, or actually it was a catalog, mail order catalog company.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having a problem with their internet connection back in the day when a 1 megabit internet connection was a big deal. And we needed to know what the IP address was, and we couldn't find the little piece of paper that it should have been on, and we didn't want to be stuck on hold for 45 minutes. So we thought, hey, let's look on the internet. The internet should be able to tell us what our IP address was, and we went on Alta Vista at the time. I don't even
Absolutely.
know if Alta Vista exists anymore,
I don't
but
think so.
uh, for those of you who haven't been on the internet for 20 years, that's what pre-existed Google,
Yes,
Bing,
that's right.
Facebook,
Right.
all those things. And honestly, we couldn't find a simple, easy, quick answer to it. And so I thought, I've got a DSL connection at home. I've got an old Windows 2000 server. I can put up a website that will tell people that. And that's how it started. It was just simply you went to that page and it was just the IP address in the window. There was no logo, no content, just a number. And that was the beginning of, I thought, I've made a useful resource for myself.
So for us non-techie mere mortals out here, what is the value of knowing your IP address, or what was it 20 years ago?
Um, Honestly, in most cases, if you're not doing something specific, it's usually in response to a technical support problem.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to get on Netflix and I can't get on, or I
It thinks
can't.
I'm in Barbados.
It thinks I'm in South Africa or I'm in San Antonio,
Yeah,
and that's usually where it starts for the vast majority of people. Gamers, back in the days when you actually ran the game server on your local machine, you'd have to give out that IP address to people so that they could connect up to your gaming server,
yeah,
so you could play Counter-Strike together or things
sure.
like that. Um, and probably the more common thing these days is where people are confirming that they're actually using their VPN. So they know what their home IP address
Exactly.
is. They turn their VPN on. They come back to the site and go, hey, it's different. I'm no longer in San Antonio. I'm now in Barbados.
So walk us through. You touched on just a little bit about transitioning from 20 years ago typing in, trying to find my IP address, and then voila, I just created this website to now it's actually a full-time business, and I've got people that work under me type thing. What was the
Yep.
what was the quick timeline in those last 20 years?
The I don't know if there's a quick
I was going to
timeline.
say
It was
that's
18
a
years,
contradiction of terms.
but I could condense it. Went a number of years before I ever even realized there was any traffic coming to the site.
Mm,
Suddenly, I started getting alerts saying the logs on the drive were taking a lot of space. So I started looking at it. Wow, a lot of people are coming to the site.
mm.
So I put a contact form on there. Hey, if you have any questions. And so I was answering questions via email, and then I got smart and said, I should just answer these questions actually on the website. So I put together the 10 most frequently asked questions and put them on the website and added a couple more pages. And that's kind of how the actually starting the site came along. Then I think when did Google AdWords start? 2008, 2005, something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
probably mid to late 2000s. Yeah,
Yep. So then I started to, rather than trying to find specific advertisers, this Google AdWords thing was great. You put a little code on your site, and an ad comes up, and voila, you make a few dollars a day or something
sure.
like that. And so that was kind of the genesis in my mind, like, oh, this could actually be a business. I can't make very much money off of any one individual user, but this is an incredibly common question, and lots of people are coming to my site. you know, I should be able to make lots of money via ads. And one of the challenges the early days was that mentality of, well, let me just throw as many ads on the site as possible.
Right.
So rather than making 1 cent per person, I can make 2 cents per person, and
Mm-hmm.
quickly learned that people don't like that behavior. I'm starting to see that again uh,
Yeah,
on these websites where oh, I want to read that article, and it's like 1 sentence per page, and there's 20 ads. You got to keep
exactly.
reloading. Like, oh gosh.
Mm.
So, I really fought to balance the user experience with my desire to be rich and famous, and really just try to keep it like, I need to cover my costs and make a little bit of money, but I really want to make the experience as pleasant as possible. And so that's kind of been the underlying theme for many, many years of, what's really in the best interest of the people visiting my website.
Right.
Uh, not can I make more? Hey, if I talk about this instead of that, can I make a little more affiliate money? But to really say, what's in the user's best interest,
Mm-hmm.
and really be able to build loyalty based off of that
So,
process.
really, what you're trying to say is that your autobiography would be titled like "The Accidental Millionaire" or something to that effect. So, I just woke up one day and 6 million people were coming to my site.
Well, it took that one day was about 10 years.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
you know,
So,
I, I I did try a lot of other businesses, and kind of in the intervening years, I tried to compete with Amazon and selling books, and
yeah.
did a variety of other little things that on little side gigs that never really was just hey, I worked an extra 20 hours this week and I made $20.
Mm.
That's just not a good use of my
That's
time.
exactly right. Yeah, that is. I'd make more money making fries at McDonald's than I'm making online. So yeah. Um, so was your background in IT?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I'm one of those people that I would never follow my own or do as I say, not as I do. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't graduate college. When I was in college and I was working at the catalog company, at the mail order company, I was making more money than my college friends, and
Yep.
making more money than a number of people that I knew that had graduated college and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I got into sales and started helping them out with their website and IT. And so I kind of, that self-taught website
Sure.
developer IT person is kind of where I came from, and that's kind of been what I've done ever since.
I am in no way ever wanting to disparage the college experience because I really did have a good time. Met my wife at college. Probably was the best thing that ever happened to me. But it really is interesting that I have a lot of friends in the kind of the tech space, and people that we interview. It's amazing that their experience and training did not come from those 4 years that they spent in university. It came from just practical experience on the job, hacking things on their own at night and on weekends, typing in Google searches, watching YouTube videos, and just doing it, just doing
Yeah.
the task itself. So, um, I wanted to ask you, when did you in that 20-year period or whatever, when did you wake up and say, "Wow, this actually is a real deal. This is going to be my primary gig now."
I think that was kind of a transition. Probably about 5 years ago, I was making as much from my side gig as I was from my day job. I really liked my day job. I was good at it, doing
Mm-hmm.
web development and running the IT for an online life insurance broker.
Uh-huh.
And my wife and I we're both very risk averse people,
Mm.
which probably doesn't make for a good entrepreneur. Um, but the reality is we're just not the sort of people that we're going to like, hey, let's just both quit our day jobs and do this with no safety net. That's just
Yep.
not who we were or are at this point. And so once my day job, when the financial crisis hit, my day job, hey, we can't keep you on full time. Can you work part time? That was kind of like one of my first opportunities of like, oh, I'll cut down my hours, I'll make less money, but it's still that kind of safety net where I can take my extra
Sure.
time and put it towards my business. My
Right.
wife and I, we talked about it, we prayed about it, and said, well, let's try it and see how it goes. And so we did that, and it was working well. It was kind of this nice balance where I wasn't fully at risk on
Mm-hmm.
my own business. I
Yeah.
did have that day job to fall back on. And the economy started to get better. I went back to work full time for them, and then they had some challenges, and ultimately they went out of business. And so that was kind of my challenge. That was kind of the okay, either jump in or not jump in at that point. So again, my wife and I talked about it. We prayed about it and said, okay, let's give it 6 months, and if you can actually start making, because the business was making money without me putting a ton of effort into it. So the question is, if I put more effort into it, will it really make more money?
Right.
And so let's give it 6 months, and over the next 6 months, I was able to grow the business, grow the traffic, grow the content, grow the resources that I have on it, and consequently made more money. And at the end of the 6 months, we said, okay, let's give it a year, give it a 1 year extension. And then after that year, it was like, okay, this is doing good. Why don't you do this full time? You like this, you're happy, you can survive working from home.
Sure.
Let's make this a full time gig. So that's kind of that transition of how it went for me. It was definitely not an overnight transition. Right. And what at the moment seemed like a really challenging situation, getting laid off or getting reduced to part time, really for me just turned out to be opportunities to maybe I needed a little push to take that risk that I otherwise wouldn't have taken on my own.
But it's that story is not unique, and it's not rare. I mean, there are people that are burn the boats type entrepreneurs. That I'm jumping out of the boat. We are not looking back. We're going to burn the bridge. No retreat. And so many times that they get 6 months into it and they're like, I don't even like this. I burned every bridge I had. There was no transition period. I don't like working at home by myself. I'm not a good manager of my own time, and all these things that come up. And I think in some ways it's, you almost looked at it disparagingly. We're risk averse, but it's actually almost like risk wise in some ways. I think that says,
that's the way we look at it.
Absolutely. That says, and I'm pretty proud. I am okay with risk. So, but I do see the wisdom in saying, let's build a foundation that we're kind of walking upstairs instead of, trying to run up a slick hill, type thing. Yeah. So, I really like the way that you unpacked that and said that, it wasn't just 15 years into this, I woke up and web traffic was 3 million a month, and I thought, well, wow, if I double the Google AdWords on here, I can quit my job type thing. So, and just, stuff it with affiliate ads and things like that. I really appreciate the fact that you are trying to do things with your client and customer in mind. Yeah. So many, you and I can both show so many examples on the web of people that it's just bloated, with there's so little value behind it, and all they're relying on is just traffic, to go through the kind of clickbait type scenario. But so tell me, you transitioned to full time. How long was it before you went from somebody beyond just Chris Parker working on this and where are you today as far as like your team is concerned?
So over the last couple of years, so previously I'd written most of the content myself on some things that I used some contract writers here and there. A couple of years ago, I started working with someone that I knew that had been a writer at an agency, and he was going his own way. And so I contracted with him to start being kind of my primary content writer. I liked his vision of really wanting to understand the content that he wrote about, not just regurgitate stuff, but to really understand it. And he really understood my vision of trying to write about technical subjects for people who aren't technical, and really trying to avoid the mumbo jumbo, avoid the geek speak, the terminology, because if people can't understand it that aren't in the industry, then, how's that helping anyone?
Right.
It's kind of, I think every industry gets that way. Once you're in the industry for a long time, you start using all the industry acronyms, and people outside the industry have no idea what you're talking about because it's not their industry. Yeah. And so he's been really good at writing content that just much better writer than I am. That really is able to communicate technical subjects in a non-technical way. Brought on a contract graphic artist to spruce things up because, again, I'm not a graphic artist,
Sure.
definitely not what I do. And about a year ago, probably should have done it much sooner, but about a year ago, I started working with a business coach,
Okay.
um, which in some way has been a really good thing, but it's also been really challenging for me personally
Mm-hmm.
in terms that he thinks very differently than I do,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is actually I don't think I'd want a business coach which thinks the same
Right.
way. I need someone
Right.
who thinks differently, who can, you know, see things in a different light and has different experiences that can kind of just see things differently. And it's
Yep.
not, I'm on the inside looking
Sure.
out, he's on the outside
Oh, no,
looking in. It's
I'm
a very
glad I
different
didn't marry
game.
me.
That
So
would be disaster.
exactly.
And so, one of the things that, what I talked about kind of being uncomfortable is that he's been really good at finding my tolerance of kind of pushing me beyond what I'm comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with. And like, hey, you really, if you want to grow as a business person, if you want to grow your business beyond where it is now, you have to do things
Mm.
differently. You
Yep.
have to do things that you're uncomfortable with. And that was kind of a hard pill for me to swallow. But like, I've been doing this for so long, it's working.
Yep.
But it's like, well, no, if you want to do better, which is why you hired me to do better,
Yep.
then you have to do things that are uncomfortable. And one of those is podcast interviews and
Well, I appreciate him leading you our direction.
and it's after the first one or two were a good experience. They've all been a great experience. It's really
Good.
good for me to learn, and I think it's really helped me a lot. One of the potential challenges of being a solo person is you're sitting in your home office and you have
Sure.
less interaction, and it's a way for me to make sure that I'm really being kind of outward focused and connecting
Mm-hmm.
with people, real people, as opposed
Yep.
to, well, they're just a theoretical person behind a screen that I can't ever see or ever really know who they are.
Has that transition, was it easy? I mean, you went from working in I'm assuming some form of an office environment or cubicle farm or however you want to phrase that to, working by yourself. What's been the biggest hurdle of the transition? And maybe that's kind of our pain point. I mean, how did you overcome the transition of working from, or is it still a difficult obstacle?
I mean, I think there are kind of some generic challenges of having from worked in an office to working by yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think generic ones, which applies to me, is just kind of that social interaction.
Yeah.
That I'm not inherently, I'm not a social person. I don't generally like, oh yeah, I just want to go out and be in a room full of people. That's not who I am.
Sure.
But I realized that I was getting, a certain amount of social interaction at work, which
Mm-hmm.
kept me, helps keep me alive. That once I started working from home, I didn't have that
Right.
type of interaction. It's not that I needed to be in a big room of people, but I still needed to interact with living, breathing people
Mm-hmm.
that I could connect with. And so it's been a matter of just making sure that I have those things set up in my life. My wife tells me that when we go out and do things, I'm much more talkative now because
Always a bonus.
I don't, I'm not talking to people as much
Yeah.
during my day. So
Yeah.
there's an outlet for that. I've made sure that there's a businessman friend of mine or two of them from church that I get with each of them, maybe once a week, once every other week or so.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about our businesses. We
Yep.
just sit down, have coffee, breakfast, whatever. And I think that helps as well as just making sure that I'm realizing that that is a need of for me to have that social interaction, and that I need to, put it on my schedule. It's something that
Right.
I need to make
Right.
an effort to do, not just kind of hope it happens
Sure.
or let it happen.
So is this, I
And
mean, if you're online, are you hanging out at Starbucks? Are you going to co-working spaces? Are you doing other things that are intentional in that kind of space?
for me, no, I don't work really well. I don't work in those environments where
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of background noise. I
Right.
prefer my quiet. I prefer sitting here next to my dog with him sleeping next to me, with the air conditioner just right.
Yeah,
And
exactly. It's your environment. Is that a
it's
schnauzer? Did I see that or hear that on another interview that
yes, he is a mini schnauzer, which means that I have to silence absolutely everything before I do any phone calls because He's always alert and always extremely vocal when he hears something that he doesn't recognize.
Well, he's probably a cheap VA too, though, for you. So,
Yes.
and company. Well, before we kind of transition to like the last kind of the deep dive part. There's a couple of three questions or whatever that I had just looking at your website and just that I wanted to kind of unpack a little bit with you too. And one of them is, if you said that this whole thing started when I typed in, what is my IP address? If you do that today, doesn't Google show you the IP address that you're logging in from just automatically?
Yes, it does. And
And
that
how
was
did
something
that
that
affect your business?
surprisingly very little. And you're like, how could that not affect you? And it's something that Google put into place probably 5 or 6 years ago. They
Hmm.
started, I think they started actually answering a number of queries for lots of things. If you started asking how old was an actor, Google would just tell you that as opposed to sending you to a site
Okay.
where that had. And so when Google initially started toying with this answering your IP address, um, I honestly, I was like, oh, there was kind of, a low moment
Hmm.
in my thought process. Was like, oh gosh, I've just been put out of business by Google. They I'm done. It's 90% of my traffic is going to be gone. And so, well, they must only be testing it because it's only, I saw maybe a 5 or 10% drop in my traffic.
Hmm.
Well, they must just be testing it. And it's just me who's seeing, or just some people who are seeing it. And ultimately it turned out, there's a bunch of different queries that you could do for that. What's my IP address? What is my IP, all sorts
Sure.
of derivations of that they started. Here's the IP address that you've connected to Google with. Um, I felt it was actually really surprising that I only had a minor drop in traffic. And even more so is it had zero impact on my revenue, which is like, well, how could it have no impact? Well, I think you had the people they just wanted that.
Hmm.
They got, and those are the people that previously came to my website, got the answer, hit back, closed the browser,
Gone.
whatever.
Yeah.
They never clicked on an ad. They never went anywhere on my site.
Right.
So
That
ultimately,
makes
what
sense.
ended up happening is the page views per visit actually went up. The people that were coming to the site were no longer just backing away and going
Right.
away.
Right. They were actually clicking on links and looking at articles and yeah.
Yeah. And there's more that the site does than just shows their IP address. So if the person's just doing that, then Google can answer that.
Hmm.
But for people who are using a VPN and they're trying to confirm their VPN, well, does the VPN, is it really in Australia? Is it really in the
Yep.
UK? Google's, cross my fingers, Google is not currently answering with that kind of
Right.
information. It's
Right.
just, here's a number, and leave you to figure out whether that's relevant to you or not.
Speaking of VPN, your site currently has a pop up that asks, it's a kind of a one question survey question if I remember correctly, that says something about, are you using a VPN or something to that effect. What's kind of the thought behind that survey? Is there some method behind the madness?
There is a distinct method behind the madness. I actually started going through a master class by Ryan Levesque
Yep.
called the Ask
Ask
Method.
method. Yeah, I've got it in one of
And
my browsers right now open.
and while that particular survey is not an Ask Method survey, it's really been inspired by getting about halfway through that
Hmm.
process, and really trying to understand. We did a different version of it, and the question was, why did you come to the website?
Hmm.
And the well, of course, to get my IP address, but it was, well, but why did you need the IP
Yeah,
address?
that's good.
And so, really, a lot of this is the making an effort to really understand why people are coming to the website. What are the challenges that they're having that they're trying to resolve by coming to the website? And so, part of that is, when we initially did this, we found lots of people were just trying to confirm that their VPN was working.
Hmm.
We, wow, that was kind of surprising. So we wanted to dig more in finding out, um, why are you using a VPN? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Which one are you using? How would you
Right.
rank it? And then for the people that aren't using VPNs, do you know what a VPN is? And you've just chosen not to use it. You have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what it is, because there is obviously with people looking at IP addresses, there's a very good tie-in for a product placement
Exactly.
in
Exactly.
conjunction with that, which is
Yep.
what we do. Um,
And that makes
but
sense.
but better understanding the challenges that people have, which is one of the things that we did with an extensive Ask Method survey, is really trying to find out. Well, there's three types of VPN users out there: people who want to be able to access specific content that they can't currently access. People that are concerned about security, and so we've did tons of survey, did a fairly extensive survey, thousands of results, reading every single long form answer to really find out the language that people use, so that as we write articles and talk about
Right.
VPNs, we're actually talking about it in the language that people who use them or want to use them are actually using, not industry speak, not
Sure.
technical
Right.
techno babble. We
Right.
still need to explain the product, but really trying to connect with these. The person who's concerned about tracking talks about a VPN this way.
Right.
These are their concerns. So we need to write content that really resonates with that audience and explains it to them in terminology that they use,
Sure.
as opposed to terminology that I use.
Absolutely. And I promise I'm just going to ask you one more follow-up question, and then we will
Yeah.
take our deep dive. But so with that kind of traffic, everybody's always talking about, oh, you've got to build your email list. You got to build your email list. But
Mm-hmm.
with your traffic, I would think that may not be as imperative for you, just based on the fact that you have so much traffic coming into your site, through your lead funnels or whatever you want to call it. I mean, are you building or have you built an email list, or are you relying solely off of just traffic that's coming through your site, or is it some combination of the above?
The vast majority of traffic coming to the site is natural search,
Mm-hmm.
referrals, and people they've got it bookmarked. Very little from social media. It's not. I mean, we get traffic, but in comparison to 200,000 people a day, if I can get 1,000 people, or even if I got 10,000 people from social media in a day, that's still only
Exactly.
5% of my
Sure.
traffic. So it's in some sense, it's really hard to move the big needle with social media and stuff like that.
Right.
We do have a mailing list. It really, to be honest, it hasn't been super effective, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to go through the Ask method to really, obviously this isn't working quite right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got about 40,000 people on the list.
Mm-hmm. Which again is a small percentage of your organic traffic.
Correct. It's an incredibly small percentage of the traffic. And even if, and so I don't know that we have to communicate value of why they should be on a mailing list.
Right. Right.
If they're there just to get their IP address, it's like, well, why should I be on a mailing list? What are you going to tell me that I don't already know
Sure.
that you can tell me via email?
Sure.
So it's something we're really trying to figure out, to see if I think there is value there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be a double, triple my revenue type
Right.
of value.
Right.
Um,
But you don't have to
I
market
think,
through that either. That's not
correct.
your primary marketing channel, because you have such, enormous numbers of your traffic numbers are so enormous compared to the average website out there. So I see that being a nice problem to have.
Yeah, it is. It's a unique problem to have lots of traffic, and how do you monetize it when it's not intentional, looking for a product,
Sure.
looking for a service. That's been one of the ongoing challenges. How do we effectively monetize? There's
Just
been some
large number of
advancements in
traffic.
technologies. Yeah, it's just, it's kind of like dictionary.com. How do you monetize that traffic?
Yeah. There's no
Trying to
one in
sell
our listening
dictionaries?
audience, I promise you, there's no one in our listening audience that will be able to answer that question, because nobody's had that problem and overcome it in our listening audience. It's, how did I monetize 6 million visitors a month? I don't know. Yeah, that's
It's probably similar to like news sites having to figure out how to monetize stuff.
yeah.
They've just chosen throw more and more ads on it. I'm not going to go down that route.
Right.
It's not a good experience, but they have that same sort of challenge in that you have lots of traffic, but it's not. I'm not here looking for a camcorder. I'm not looking
Right.
to buy a book. It's I just wanted to read the news.
Yep.
How do you?
Yep.
It's
Without
it's
annoying them. That's
yes, yes.
So let's finally get to this that I've been promising for the last 10 minutes. Let's get to the deep dive, really get in your head here. So other than the self-deprecating comments you made earlier about not finishing university, and I'm thinking, well, neither did Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. So you're in great
Yeah.
company there. So who's somebody online that you would say really inspires you and why?
I have to admit, I'm not one of those people that stalk people online.
Sure.
I'm not a Gary Vaynerchuk fan. Not that I'm not a fan of
Sure.
his.
Sure. And they don't have to be online. I mean, you can just say,
Yeah.
this is who my inspiration is. Yeah.
To me, I'm inspired by people who could do things that I can't do, that have fundamentally different skill sets. I don't. Do you know who Adam Savage is? No.
I don't.
So Adam Savage was one of the guys from MythBusters, and he is
The redheaded guy.
Yes, he's the redheaded guy.
Okay, yeah.
He came up through like prop making and stuff like that, and so he has a new business called Tested, and I think they're actually coming out with MythBusters Junior in the near future. But on Tested, he just builds stuff. And it's just, to me, it's really neat to see someone who has that kind of artistic skill set of building things.
Yeah.
But he also has this very technical, practical side of, processes and orders, and
Exactly.
that kind of resonates with me. And then MythBusters, they always had this saying that failure is always an option. But it was that attitude of like, look, it's not always going to work.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to be a dismal failure.
Yep.
And I think that's a valuable life lesson that we have to be careful watching the online personalities,
Right.
that they're only going to show us their successes for the most part. They're not going to say, oh, I spent $10 million on this product line and we sold 3 of them.
Yep.
Because that's just not who they are.
It certainly doesn't help their sales. I mean, what did Edison say? He said, I didn't fail. I found 10,000 ways a light bulb didn't work, or something to that effect,
Yeah.
So tell me, if you could go back, go back a few years where you were in a completely different stage of business development or whatever, what is one piece of advice that you would give yourself that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Can I give you 2?
Sure.
One is get a business coach. Someone who can see your business from the outside, who thinks differently and can slap you upside the head when you're doing stupid things and you don't realize it. And I think the other thing that I'm kind of in the process of wrestling with now is design processes in your business that can be handed off to other people.
Kind of the E-Myth, work on your business instead of in it type thing.
Well, being able to facilitate that. For so many things on my website, I was the person who coded it. I'm the person who maintains it, and I've been the person responding to a bulk of the support tickets. And so, consequently, I didn't build SOPs. I didn't build ways for other people to log in and do maintenance.
Right.
On things. And now I'm having to retool things and rethink things of like, okay, how do I train someone to do this? Now that I'm so far into the weeds with this that like you said, I'm so much spending so much of my time doing the business as opposed to directing or managing the business, that I got to get working to get myself out of these areas where this is not. And that was one of the things that the business coach helped me to realize. Specifically, the first place that he made me realize it was with accounting. Not that I've switched my accounting off, but he asked, so he's just asking about the business. So who do you have doing your accounting? And I was very proudly, I'm doing my accounting.
Me and QuickBooks.
Me and QuickBooks. And his response was, okay, we've talked about how much money you'll make a year. So do you realize that you're paying your uneducated, untrained, no industry experience accountant this amount of money an hour to do a crappy job?
Well, yes, I recognize that. Of course I did.
And,
Thanks for posing
and
it that way.
to me, I was all happy about the fact that, look, I'm doing all this by myself. I don't,
Exactly.
in my mind, I don't have to rely on anybody. But he was really just kind of saying, well, maybe with the accounting, because of the way my business is set up, it was only a couple hours a month. Maybe it's not really able to be outsourced. But it was that thought process of, is this worth the amount of, is this really where I should be spending my
Yep.
valuable time?
Yep.
Should I be spending my valuable time deleting logs, rotating logs, backing things up? Should I be spending my time answering support tickets? Well, some of them should be me, and some
Sure.
of them could probably be handled by somebody else.
Yep.
Should I be the one who is coding the HTML these days? No, anybody,
Yep.
I'm a really expensive web developer.
No
I
doubt
shouldn't
about
be
it.
doing that.
And you're a more expensive accountant.
Yes, and a really crummy accountant.
Aren't we all? Aren't all us non-accountants for sure? Well, let me close by just asking you: do you have a life quote that really just kind of inspires you or drives you? That's that one line that you look at, you got it taped up on your wall by your laptop, whatever.
There's a quote that I really love that I think entrepreneurs need to memorize.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yes.
I don't know who said it, but once we think that we're the smartest person, we're in trouble. We're not going to learn. We're not going to grow, whether it's personal life or professional life. You've got to be open to outside input and realizing that people have skills and talents that you don't have, and you need to be able to listen to people who are experts in their fields.
Yep. Chris, that is such great advice, and I love the way that I actually got that question I had in my list to ask you one before, but what a great way to end our interview today. So just why don't you just bring us home and tell us where we can find you online, and is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you just want to add to this?
I will tell you where people can find me online, and then I'll throw in some tidbits for entrepreneurs out there.
Great.
So obviously you can find me at whatismyipaddress.com, which
Mm-hmm.
is the website for me. But if you want to get in touch with me personally, you can go to cgparker.com and kind of see some of the behind the scenes stuff of running the business that I'm putting together, and starting to try to help people outside of whatismyipaddress.com with online privacy and online safety. And so I think there's three things that all entrepreneurs should do.
Uh-huh.
If you don't have an offsite backup for your computer, get one today. It could be Carbonite, anyone. Often I hear people say, well, I've got that backup hard drive sitting on my desk, and once a week, if I remember it, I copy everything onto the backup drive. And well, that's good if you remember, and most of us aren't really good at repeating things every Friday before we walk out of the office.
Sure.
So it's probably only getting done once a month. And the other thing is that it's not really a backup. If someone broke into your house and stole your computer and the hard drive right next to it, it's all gone. If heaven forbid, your house burns down, you get flooded out, it's gone. If your backup isn't off site, then it's not really truly a backup.
Right. Right.
And I've helped a couple business owners out with that. And, I remember one guy, the owner of the company was down for 3 or 4 days, no
Mm-hmm.
access to all of his notes, all of his files.
Yeah.
While we sent the drive off to a drive saver to recover everything. Luckily, we were able to get the vast majority of it back. But if you just had an offsite backup, yeah, maybe you got to spend the night downloading stuff. But how for $60 a year versus
Sure.
4 days of being offline.
Exactly. Yeah. Or some things you may never recover. So
Yes. Yeah, if you're lucky,
you're lucky.
you get,
Yeah.
and that can help with like ransomware and stuff
Sure.
like that. You don't have to pay ransom when I've got a backup. We don't have to worry about the ransom.
Sure.
Use a password manager. Everyone's been breached in the last couple of years. If they haven't been breached, they will be breached. And if you're using the same password for your email address in 2 places,
Yep.
they're going to get into another account. And
Yep.
password managers are just a way to go. If you want to find out if your email address has ever been associated with a breach, There's a guy, Troy Hunt, who has put together a massive database of all the breaches that he's been able to get data from called, I'm going to say it wrong and then correct it. Have I been owned? But instead of an O, a P.
Okay.
That's,
Yep.
the hacker term for being owned is
Sure.
take the O, make it a P.
Right.
You type in your email address, and it'll tell you every database that email address has been compromised on. And that should be kind of a red flag to people like, oh, wow, I better use a password manager. I can't keep using that same password on everything that I do. And then use a VPN when you're out in public Wi-Fi or traveling.
Great advice. Great advice.
Easy.
And absolutely necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
From someone who spends about half his life in a Starbucks, absolutely necessary. So let me read offsite backups, use password managers, and use a VPN. What great sage advice for our listeners and just everyone, not just entrepreneurs, but everyone. But Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. And even though we are called Rising Tide Startups, your 20-year startup, we appreciate you kind of outlining the path and the brief timeline, and just speaking into our lives and the lives of our listeners, and just giving us some sage advice, some good life lessons, good business lessons, and just things to, just practical steps so that we actually will do things better and more efficiently. And Chris, just once again, thanks again for taking your time and just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Kevin. You too.